Hi, my name is Ben Grayson. I am Ben Brickson on Instagram, and we'll be posting more of this walkthrough stuff. And so what you're seeing here is a mock based on the world of Horizon. Here you have the Tallneck, known as like a comm draft or satellite dish, essentially walking through the world, which does a hive mind radio essentially to the other creatures wandering the landscapes. From what I can find, this is 2 minifig scale of it. The creature is about 61 feet tall. Aloy herself measures 5'6", so 11 Aloys up to get the height of it, and then working backwards of proportioning out the head, legs, and going back in and adding as much detailing as possible. There's a few of the pneumatic tubings wrapping through, but most of that wire work is actually animal teeth cutting back in and out to see how you can get that nervous system to really wrap organically through the creature. So the trees are also a fun thing that's created in there. There's a lot of interest in seeing, or I was very interested in seeing how you can make a very spindly but lightweight tree. And it's most of the flower stem pieces coming off, stuck into the 6-stud leaf piece that are then rotated over. It's the same module, but repeated again and again. And that repetition with slight variation can create a very organic form very quickly with using the same style continuously.
What else do you have in this section back here?
Yeah, so back here, there are 3 of the Watcher creatures walking through, 2 Grazers, which are a peaceful creature in game, more of like a deer equivalent within the world, while the Watchers would be a Velociraptor-esque. And then off to the right there is a Snapmaw, which is an alligator or crocodile equivalent within the world. The landscape starts out from basically like an ocean of dark colors leading up to light to get the blending below those trans-blue cheese wedge slopes over the painted landscape of, not painted bricks, but get the color swatch coming up from the wet sand to dry sand to mud, up into grass, lush grass, and then over to the ruined city.
It's very realistic feeling when you have those different colors that kind of represent, like you said, wet sand, even dry sand, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly, thank you. And so it's a continuous wave pattern going 2 ways. The whitecaps going over that. While capturing the river is done in a totally different technique. It's the 1x2 trans running longitudinally to get the flow path of the water throughout that, coming down over the waterfalls beneath the bridge, moving through it. So different bodies of water, operate differently, of course.
And then talk a little bit about this building, because building this type of half-destroyed structure and making it look kind of natural like this is not easy.
Yeah, definitely. So it's based off of an old industrial building within our time period. And so these buildings are basically concrete beam and column structure running throughout with infill walls. So when the infill walls, such as these tan you can see, fall through, the structure will not collapse, since all of the light gray in this is load bearing itself. And so that when that goes down, then it'll actually start to lose structure within the footprint of the building. And so slow deterioration through times as trees start to grow up, pools start to form within the foundation, wear away at the building, and then it starts to decay over that time.
And then one of the highlights is definitely the various creatures. So can you point out any kind of like parts techniques on those and how those came together?
Yeah, definitely. The Watcher is one of the more interesting, I would say, small-wise. It is basically the 1x2 brick you can see there, tan. And that helps, let me pop the leg here off for you. That helps to arc back and give the body that angle up under there, and then slowly round over with the grill to create the kind of haunched Velociraptor-esque style they have within the game. And then clear bars supporting their very spindly droid arm-esque legs of the creature. Very lightweight, fast-moving scouts within the world, essentially.
I like the posability on it. Kind of feels very agile and lots of action.
Yes, thank you. Each creature has tried to have as many joints in there as possible while maintaining the structure. The Snapmaw over there essentially follows a spinal cage of ball joints to get a slight variation within it, but not opened up to too much movement, so it's loose. The Grazers are essentially, grab one of these guys. The Grazers are a straight build. In there, the legs coming off, not terribly complicated joint-wise, with the Tallneck having each joint being able to articulate itself. And in that doing so, with all the joints wanting to move, it's easy to compress on itself. So like you can look at the kneecap, the joint is situated back behind there, while the pin in front of it, or the plate in front of it, starts to bear down on the lower portion of the leg, and that's how it works for each joint. So even though it can move, situated like this, all joints are set in compression. So it's weighted down on itself while it does have the posability to move itself if need be. The neck is fixed to the body in there with the head doing the same compressive technique. Basically a bar up under and then rotate it back so it'll bear on the load of the neck.
Now, how does this compare to the official Lego set?
Sure, so the official Lego set off to the side there, it's a nice set, more like a playstyle-esque build, while not to minifig scale. Looking at the minifig scale of it, I did some research to find the height of the Tallneck, and what I could find, it's about 61 feet tall, or the in-game version 61 feet tall. Aloy, the main character, is 5'6", so about 11 of her tall toe-to-head stacked up can create the overall footprint of the Tallneck, and then working from that, essentially set dimension, the proportions of head, leg, knee, joints, all those, and then building inwards to incorporate the detail, and then slowly wrapping, teeth for all the cables, articulation of the essentially extroverted vertebrae running up the neck of it, same with the jointing around. So
yours is quite a bit larger. I also love the detailing on the top up here.
Oh, sure. So what this is, it's a lot of the slope bricks essentially notched together in kind of a pie-shaped structure. They can interlock and then follow the central, I guess what would you call it, the kind of the 45 plates underneath that can then lock into that. But that helps give it a larger circle with all studs essentially pointing outwards. A couple of these for the building techniques, studs do point inwards. So a lot of snot techniques happening within that head, especially there. So.
And I also wanted to point out this fantastic landscaping you have here with kind of incorporating the plants into the cracks in the rocks. So how did you achieve that?
Oh, sure. Each of the roadscapes essentially comes off of a brick with studs on the side, running a length of it, and then a few of those situated within the actual spots in the side of the city give basically the very slides crack through. And once the cracks are there, setting in landscape wherever that can fit, most of the stem pieces popped out with the 3 leaves to really come out and just look like it's very bursting through the cracks of the decayed roadways. Lots of brown and grays for rust of stoplights. Same with the roof, old metal that's now decayed within this time period.
When you transport this to a show, does it travel as all one piece, or how does that fit together?
Sure, so this travels as 4 different segments. You can faintly see this is one segment line here, there, and then this, with the city and building remain as the last largest chunk of it. Each of the creatures and trees come off. The trees are very spindly, so a lot of rebuilding on those, essentially. Well, the Tallneck being sturdy enough to more or less support itself. Well, leg's head coming off, but was not in disarray taking it here, I should say.
Now, you did win the award for Best Landscape here at Brick Fair, Virginia 2022, which is very impressive because that's a very tough category. So do you have any kind of tips that you can give people in terms of what you learned and some of the parts you've used here?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. So it's a lot of color swatching and essentially painting. How can you go from dark to light, light to dark, very subtly in doing that? So one good example is the water. You can kind of see the dark coming up through slightly lighter, and along that side profile, you can start to see the color gradation of the black to navy to the brick blue, turquoise, cyan blue, and then slowly up to the land. And so that color, it's very stark against itself, but the translucent cheese slope of the water helps to bring that and really smear that color together. The landscape, giving it a very rough plate stacked up terrain coming in and out, helps to also blend the color, and then looking at where you'd have like a wet sand to mud, an actual sand, possibly a different kind of mud, up to a faint grass where it's starting to grow, such as like the sand green plating all over, but then becoming much more lush with bright green leaves followed by the stem pieces popping up and around that, and a different tan sanding bank following a river, since like the different waterways will operate different within various landscaping. And as you transition into the road, that can be much more of a stark contrast between landscapes. Since essentially when roads are laid, everything is kind of cut. You might have the gradation of like gravel fill over to actual grass road paths, but then the urban environment can be its totally own thing, of course. Using all sorts of basically arcing movements, making sure nothing reads as too square, and so everything is more or less a rounded profile, but out of brick is one nice way to do it. So you can get these kind of sweeping motions since there's nothing really rectilinear in nature, of course.
Fantastic. I love the way you described that there, and I think there's definitely a lot of good tips from looking at a build like this that people can learn from. Do you have any idea how many pieces are in the whole layout?
Oh, I really do not. So I was looked out with the pick-a-brick wall. Most of the nougat color here is 1x2 plate. A lot of the sand green is 1x4 plates. So very small plates, essentially just lined up because that was the bulk, easiest way to accumulate that part in color. I really do not. The most intensive part is most definitely the Tallneck, but there's certainly more stem pieces than anything else on this landscape.
What was your process like when building this in terms of research? Were you looking at like screenshots from the game? How did that work?
Yeah, it was a lot of walkthroughs of games, definitely screenshots, and so the landscape is not based on any specific point within the world where each of the creatures are. It started with looking at a screenshot of the creature, breaking that down of how it can create the shape of it, what needs to happen. And for like the smaller guys like Watchers, Snapmaw, or Grazers, it was much more straightforward, I should say, in terms of getting the scale right. Because they're small, 2 minifig, not much bigger, which then was a very challenge of getting what small pieces can accommodate the, like dainty forearms of the Grazer creatures, while like tinier horns at the small scale. Since the Tallneck was a much harder one, since its scale, you see it far off in the landscape, very a distant creature, kind of like a walking skyscraper in a way. So finding up-close shots of it was much more of a challenge, as it's a just massive creature. Lots of gameplay walkthroughs and footage captured to see as she climbs up the neck, up the back, to then liberate the head and unlock the area of the map or see what's around her in the world that way. So the feet are a different technique with all the toes spiraling out. There are a couple hot dog bricks in there to basically get that arch wrapping around it, and then ball joint up to the ankle portion, which then has a barred connection up to the hatchets, or I guess ratchet joint, again a ratchet joint, and then up into the torso of it. So again, each leg segment is posable there, but bears down in compression on the one below it to give it a sturdy build there.
Yeah, well, just an all-around fantastic layout here, and I'm sure you've had people recognizing it from the game as well, so you make the public excited as well.
Oh yeah, a lot of fans have been like, oh, it's Horizon, and come over all very excited to see it and talk with them, rather than just noticing the build techniques, which is also very nice. So
Congratulations once again on the award, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.